What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. So today's video, JC is asking, can you compare FSELX to FTEC? We're going to break that down. First, I'm going to do my analysis, then we're going to use Grok's analysis. As you see on the left side of the screen, we have FSELX, which is the Fidelity Select Semiconductors portfolio. On the right side, we have FTEC, which is the Fidelity MSCI Information Technology Index ETF. Let's spend 2 minutes just going through FSELX so you can get a full understanding. Just to preface this video, I do have a video on FSELX, but this is dedicated to my member that wants to know the differences between them. So let's go through it real quick. Let's look at the overview. As you can see right on the bottom here, the expense ratio is 0.65%. And I want you to focus on that for a little bit, but when you look at the performance and risk, it completely makes up for that expense ratio. First, let's just go down to the overview, which is right here on the bottom left corner. As you can see, this FSELX index fund focuses just on electronic components of semiconductors, connectors, printed circuit boards, and then basically equipment vendors. What you need to think about when you're thinking of FSELX is semiconductors. That's basically all it is. And if you look at the top 10 holdings, it only has 45 holdings. Look at NVIDIA. It is the largest percentage of this fund at 25.52%. Broadcom, which is having a major year at the end of 2024 and starting 2025 at 7%. Then you have ON at 6%, NXP at 6%, Marvel at 5.88%, Taiwan Semiconductors, I'm sure you've heard of them, MU Micron Technology, and Lam Research and Monolithic Power. You will start to see differences between FTEC and FSELX. And one of the big differences is this is 100% semiconductors compared to FTEC, which is around 35%, which we will go through later. Let's first look at the performance and risk here. As you're looking here, I want you to focus on some of the big ticket items here. Last year, FTEC made 43% return, which is insane. It crushed the S&P 500, as you can see here. S&P 500 did very well at 25%, but FSELX made 43%. So who really cares about a 0.65% expense ratio when you're making 43% in 1 year? Now let's look at the further years just to get a good idea. FSELX made 18% compared to S&P 500's 8.94% over the last 3-year period. And in the 5-year period, FSELX made 30% average year after year compared to S&P's 14.53%. Looking at the 10-year, FSELX still blows S&P 500 out of the water at 26% compared to 13%. So clearly, this is a dominant index fund. This is clearly something you want to hold for the long term. I mean, look at the overall ratings: 5 stars, 3 years 4 stars, 5 years 5 stars, 10 years 5 stars. It beats the S&P 500. That's what we're comparing all of our investments to. Are we beating the S&P 500? I want you to see the composition of this. Take a look at this. Semiconductors, 78%. Semiconductor materials and equipment, 10%. That makes up for almost 90% of the fund right there. Basically, semiconductors. And you know that you are getting large cap growth stocks that basically make up NVIDIA, Broadcom, ON, NXP, Marvel, and Taiwan Semiconductors. Now, what I like about this fund is you don't just get domestic equities. You get the Taiwan Semiconductors, which accounts for a large percentage of this fund. So you have 9% in international equities compared to the domestic equities at 82.96%. And you get that regional diversification of not just United States companies, which accounts for about, let's just round up to 83%, emerging markets 5.4%, Europe 2%, and then Asia, Pacific, ex-Japan 1.45%. You can see you're getting a lot of bang for your buck here. Let's focus on the fees and distributions, and then we'll compare them to FTEC. So if you see here, you are paying for every $1,000 you have invested, you are paying $6.50, for every $1,000 invested. So you have to keep that in mind. But when you compare the rates of the performance, you can clearly see that you are getting your money's worth with this. Dividend history, you've been getting about 2 cents. Basically every year, 2023, 2024, 2021, 2020, you were getting a dividend. It's not much, but you were going for growth. We're not looking for dividends here. We're looking for capital appreciation, which FSELX offers, and your minimum investment is $0. So that is very nice that you can start, putting in $5, $10 a day if that's really what you want. Now let's take a look at FTEC. This is a different type of investment vehicle. It is an ETF, it's not an index fund, and you are able to buy and sell this during market hours compared to FSELX, where you can only buy and sell at the end of the closing day. But let's start off with the overview here. FTEC is rated at $184 a share compared to FSELX, which is in the $30 range. So for some people, they like to be able to buy more shares. That means something to them. Gross expense ratio, net expense ratio is 0.084%, which is a lot less. I'm going to quickly just go over distribution expenses just so you can see that. So if you look here, for every $1,000 you have invested, if it was 0.084%, you'd be paying 84 cents per every $1,000 you have invested, compared to FSELX, which is about $6.59. With that 0.65 expense ratio, you are receiving a small dividend of 0.49%. But let's go back to the overview. What's really more important here? Look at this top 10's holding here. We knew FSELX had a 25% allocation in NVIDIA. As you can see in FTEC, Apple makes up 17%. NVIDIA makes up 15%, Microsoft gives 13%. Now, this is why when you look at the performance, you are going to see larger gains in FSELX, because NVIDIA had the best year out of all the stocks in 2024. Now, I do think you get some good diversification here. You have the top 10 holdings in FTEC holding 60% of this fund, basically in Apple, NVIDIA, and Microsoft making up for almost 50% of the fund, just 3 companies. So just think about that for a second. If you're going to invest, you could just buy these 3 individual companies instead of FTEC and not have to pay that 0.084% expense ratio, but that's up to you. Now, let's look at the composition in more detail. Let's take a look here. As you see here, it is passively managed, it is technology, and it is sector equity. So as you can see here, FTEC invests about 80% of its assets in the MSCI Information Technology Index. So as you can see here, looking at the holdings, instead of holding 45 companies compared to FSELX, FTEC holds 296. So as we said before, top 10 holdings, 60% make up FTEC. And besides Apple, NVIDIA, and Microsoft, let's look at the other ones. Broadcom's starting to come into the picture here and starting to make a runway here at 5.89%. Then you have Salesforce, Oracle, Cisco, ServiceNow, Accenture, and then IBM, which is also a monster. So as you see here, North American companies, you have no international diversification here with FTEC. You just get 99.14%. FTEC is in North America. Compared to FSELX, we had 9% international. And then you have your market capitalization: giant, large, medium, and small, and micro. These are your diversification through here. Take a snapshot if you want. They're basically a large cap and growth, same as FSELX, but this is where it differs here. Look at the semiconductors and semiconductor equipment. Only makes up 32.7% for FTEC, and your software makes up more at 34%. And why does software make up more? Because you have Microsoft right here at 13%. And if you think about your semiconductors, it's really NVIDIA and Broadcom. The other ones, like Apple, make up different sectors and industry exposure. And that's why you have a less semiconductor exposure. So when you're saying, this member wants to compare these 2 funds, they're not investing in the same exact things. FTEC has done very well over time, and let's go over the performance so you can see. Performance of FTEC, the Fidelity MSCI Information Technology Index ETF, it says, look right here, year to date, it is up 29%. That is trailing FSELX, which is at over 40%. If you look at the 1 year, 29%, the 3 years is 11%, 5 years, 21% average, which is excellent, and it's averaged 20% over the last 10 years. Let's compare FSELX to FTEC using Grok. I think this is good to get another analysis using AI. So as you can see, I typed in FSELX versus FTEC. Now let's first go over this. It highlights the view of FSELX as a mutual fund, specifically on the semiconductor industry. And remember, it's actively managed within its portfolio, where 80% of its companies within it are design, manufacture, or sell semiconductors. Now, FTEC is an ETF that we highlighted that passively tracks the MSCI IMI Information Technology Index Fund. So you have to remember that. They're monitoring 2 different areas. FSELX, the AI on Grok is off. We just reviewed its 0.65% expense ratio, so it shows a little bit higher, but it's definitely higher because it's actively managed compared to FTEC, which is passively managed, which is why you get that 0.084% expense ratio. Now let's look at the performance as we went through. We know FSELX is outperforming around 56%, showing strong performance of 3, 5, and 10-year periods, and FTEC showing a year-to-date return of 22%. What I want to highlight with the Grok is you can see the holdings and diversification. I think it's good for you guys to see this. As you see here, FSELX focuses on semiconductors, and the top holdings heavily weighted in this sector. So that's why you see NVIDIA such 25% versus FTEC's only 15% to semiconductors. FTEC is more heavy in Apple and Microsoft and NVIDIA, which gives it a little bit more diversification. And then with the dividend yield, you're not getting much with FSELX. You're getting a dividend yield of 0.07%, where FTEC has 0.64%, so definitely better yield in that aspect. And then when you think about long-term, FSELX is going to perform better if semiconductors are doing well, and vice versa. Investment strategy suitability, it's just showing that FSELX is more suitable for investors who believe in growth in semiconductors versus FTEC appeals to a more diversified investment within the tech sector, aiming for stable long-term growth. And that's why you see Microsoft, Apple, and NVIDIA within it, instead of just FSELX having NVIDIA being the most allocated. That's a review of FSELX and FTEC. Tell me what you think. Please check out my playlist. Hit the thumbs up, comment, subscribe. I appreciate it. Check out my other plays with Fidelity, Vanguard, my trading P&L 2024, investing for beginners. And there's so much more. Just check it out. Also, go on my membership if you think about supporting the channel. I'm going to post this video for my members only, so they get access to this first. And then also check out the community where I'm always posting. Check out my WHOP in the description below. You'll also see where you can directly chat with me about stocks, charts, levels, and trades. We have so far 7 people that joined, which is awesome. You get direct chat with me and other members of the WHOP channel. You also get my YouTube portfolio, my holdings, my updates, buys and sells, my beginners courses. If you're just learning how to invest and you want to have a community that's there to support you, definitely check it out. As you can see here, it's just $5 a month. Very simple to join, and it's for beginners to learn about stocks, ETFs, index funds. You also get day trading, swing trades, and then anybody seeking community, you get to chart and chat with everybody within the member community. So definitely come check it out. We appreciate you taking the time to watch this video.